I'm starting a new sewing project. I'm gonna make a pizza milkmaid dress. Before I start anything, I've got to take my pattern together. One thing you guys might not know about me is that I used to work for Joann's. I worked there for about 8 years. And before anyone freaks out, I left the company in 2022 to pursue my current career, so I am not out of a job at the current moment. In the 8 years that I worked there, I managed to collect a lot of interesting things, mainly because they're cheap and I lack impulse control. That is how I acquired this lovely pizza flannel. And because it was on a really deep discount, I ended up purchasing whatever we had in the store. And I have been sitting on it, wondering what I'm going to do with it, until finally I decided I wanted to make a milkmaid gown. And I will be using the Anthea Milkmaid dress pattern from Mood Sewciety. It is a free pattern. You just have to search Anthea Milkmaid dress and it should take you straight to the blog post that has the free pattern in it. And no, flannel is not the suggested fabric for this pattern, but we're going to do it anyway. And just in case anyone was wondering, I chose to cut out size 12. And I am done for the night. Anthea Milkmaid dress, part 2, day 2. Part 2, day 2, either or works. It's time to prep our materials, and that means ironing. And yes, this is how I iron my large yardages of fabric. I use my lovely ironing blanket that I made myself. And then as I'm ironing, I kind of just roll it on a tube. It helps with space. And while you watch me iron, I am going to gather the rest of my materials. The first item that the pattern calls for is 5 to 6 yards of a fabric. The original one was made with a silk woven. It also alternatively recommends a rayon batiste, cotton voile, or silk charmeuse. Again, this flannel is none of those. As it is a woven fabric, we'll make it work. Also, several of the pieces need a lining, and there is no lining mentioned, so I'm assuming the original designer used the same yardage to line as they did as the facing fabric or outward facing fabric. But for me, I am going to line mine with this lovely purple cotton that I have. The next item this pattern calls for is a 24-inch invisible zipper. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a 24-inch invisible zipper. I do have several colors of 22-inch invisible zippers, so we may end up having to compromise. And aside from the pattern and the thread, those are all the materials that are actually mentioned in the beginning of the blog post. And after ironing, I decided I wanted to go ahead and start cutting out the lining. This was also where I realized I probably was not going to be able to line the entire dress out of the purple fabric, but I wanted to emphasize the skirt being lined in the purple fabric. Because the skirt, due to the split, the lining is actually going to be seen a little bit. And I didn't even have enough of the purple fabric to fully do the skirt. I ended up having to piece it together. All of the bodice pieces that needed to be lined are done out of scrap muslin fabric, because that was easy to grab. And no, I did not iron any of this fabric, I just did. And with the lining all cut out, I am done for the night. Anthea Milkmaid dress, part 3, day 3, whichever you want to go with. And today, the only goal is to cut out the main fabric, which is the pizza fabric. So that's what we're going to do. And I may not have much to say while we are cutting out the pizza fabric, so you may get some fancy music. This pattern does not come with a suggested cutting layout. Not that you use them anyway. So I kind of had to figure it out as I went along, and you'll see me at a few times struggling to see which piece would go best where, and try to save fabric by using up as much fabric as possible, if that makes sense. And now that's all cut out. Now to work on my cross-stitch project for the rest of the day. Okay, I lied. I'm not actually done for the day. So after I got home from work, I had a little bit of spurt of energy, so I decided I'm going to go ahead and prep these pieces for sewing, which means sewing the lining onto the skirt pieces because I wanted to flatline those, and then marking all of the other pieces. There was also that one piece of the skirt that I am going to have to sew together before I flatline it, so we'll be doing that as well. All right, Anthea Milkmaid dress part 4, day 4. I should probably call them day 4 because this one might be in multiple parts. Depending, because I have a longer day and I'm trying to keep the videos. But today we're going to start sewing. Step 1. Match notches on piece G and piece F. And sew. For both the main fabric and the lining. It doesn't say that, but in the second step it does say that you're supposed to have both of them done. And this does happen a lot with some patterns. They do make you trust your sewing instincts to figure out how to do certain things. But that's okay. This is a free pattern. I'm not complaining too much. And we're going to try a different camera position today. So, yeah. Also, I am choosing to forego the external microphone and some of my clips, so I'm sorry about that ahead of time. Iron your seams. Step 2 officially says to sew side C to F, specifically leaving the notch side free. But if you notice, this side has no notch, this side has no notch, and this side has no notch. But I'm assuming we need to sew the side seams together because that's what the picture looks like. And even though I set it up perfectly, I completely forgot to hit the record button while I was sewing those side seams. So here is me ironing the sewn together side seams. Oops. Alright, so the next step is to take the strap, fold them in half lengthwise, iron them, and then baste them to the tops of the arm size. Alrighty, next step. We are going to sew the lining to the main fabric along the top edge, skipping over the arm side and that piece. And there was a note at this point in the pattern saying that they had went ahead and zigzagged their center back seam to prevent it from fraying, so I went ahead and did that right here. And with this, that'll be it for this video. Meet me in the next part. Alrighty, Anthea Milkmaid Day 4, Part 2. So where we left off in the last video, I had just sewn the bodice pieces together and attached the strap. And next we are going to sew the bust. Alright, step 1 of crafting the bust. I gotta make some buttonholes. Luckily, my sewing machine has an automatic buttonhole maker. Buttonholes made. Don't judge them too harshly. They're beautiful. Alright, next step is we're creating a casing. And to do that, all we have to do is sew 1 inch away from the fold on our bust piece. Alrighty, that is done. Quite beautiful if I do say so myself. Now the next step is to insert 2 18-inch drawstrings into these buttonholes. Only, there were no drawstrings in the instructions, nor were there pattern pieces to cut out drawstrings. So I'm going to have to make my own drawstrings out of the scrap fabric. Drawstrings is pretty simple. I just cut two 2-inch rectangles that were 2 inches by 18 inches out of the fabric, and then I folded the edges to the center longwise, and then folded it over in half, and then top stitched. And then we'll have drawstrings. Alrighty, drawstrings are made. Now they will be stitched to each end, and then brought up through the buttonholes. And they are in. And the next step for this is going to be sewing 2 rows of basting stitches between these 2 notches on the bodice piece, or bust piece, whatever it's called. And that is for gathering purposes. So we're going to do that real quick. Alrighty, those stitches are done. And then I believe I'm done for the day. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Anthea Milkmaid dress day 5. Or 6? No, wait, I skipped yesterday, so it's day 5. Day 5 of working on the dress. And we're going to get these sleeves done. Step 1 for prepping the sleeve is to sew 2 basting stitches between the notches. Now there are 3 notches on this sleeve, or 3 sets of notches on the sleeve head, and it does not say between which notches on the instructions, but the sleeve itself has instructions on where to gather, so that is where we're going to put the 2 rows of basting stitches. Alrighty. The next step is to specifically says sew the length of the seam, which is these sort of sleeve sides. And it suggests to do this in the style of the French. And French seams are just sewing wrong sides together, flipping it right side out, and then sewing along that seam again, enclosing the raw edge. So that's what we're gonna do. Alright, so the next step is to hem the sleeves. And it says to press the raw edge inside by 1 inch, then fold again to create a hem. Sew, leaving enough space to insert elastic. This elastic was not mentioned in the materials. This is the first time I'm hearing of needing elastic. But luckily, I have elastic. Oh, and I went ahead and basted around at the 1 inch mark. These stitches will probably be removed later. And I just figured it was easier just to mark the 1 inch mark. Then I'm going to turn the raw edge up that 1/2 inch, baste a scant bit around this edge, and then turn it up again. Sleeves are hemmed. Time to add the elastic. And again, this pattern or instructions do not tell you how much elastic or what width elastic is needed, so I kind of just took my 1/4 inch elastic and wrapped it around my arm and judged from there. Alrighty, sleeves are done. And I will see you in the next part. Anthea Milkmaid dress, day 5, part 2. And we're going to finish up this bodice. Alright, step 1, attach the front bodice to the pieces we have already made for both the main fabric and the lining. With that done, it is time to attach the sleeves. And to attach sleeves, we must gather the sleeve head and then match the notches and then sew. The instructions suggest to go ahead and zigzag the raw edges of the armhole seam, so I'm doing that right here. Looking good. Now to add this part. So now we must gather down that front bust piece to fit here. And then sew. It is in place, and now to finish off the raw edges, we turn under the facing, and then it says to top stitch to keep the facing in place. Alrighty, the bodice is finished. And yes, I'm holding it closed because we haven't done the zipper yet. And I will see you again for the next part where we start on the skirts. Anthea Milkmaid Dress Day 6. Let's start these skirts. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get all of this into one single frame, but you want to take the folded version of this piece and sew it to this piece, or two of these pieces on each side, matching the notches. And to add the slit on the left side, we stop sewing at this point. That is done. And the pattern suggests to French the seams, but instead I'm going to fell them. And felling is where you flatten the seam and then top stitch next to the seam to keep it in place, but also to help keep it from fraying. Done with the front. Now to work on the back. So the next step actually says to sew up the center back seam, stopping at the notch for the zipper. There is no notch for the zipper. So I'm going to skip over that for now and move on to the next step, which is to take the other side pieces and sew them onto this side, just like we did for the front. And I will sew up the back seam when we install the zipper. And now that we have a front and a back, time to repeat all those steps on these side seams. And we have a finished skirt with a split. And I am done for today. Anthea Milkmaid Dress Day 7. Let's finish this up. And again, I'm not going to be able to fit the whole thing in one frame, but need to attach the skirt to the top. So I haven't even started sewing today and already run into problems. So it says, starting at center back, match all of your seams up from the skirt and the top piece. And it works great until you get to the center front, where I've got a good, I want to say, 1/2 inch of extra space. Like, in there when I match up the seams. And I don't know what I did. I could have sworn I took the same seam allowance, but I'm not ripping out any seams. So what I'm going to do is on each edge of the center front, I'm going to create a tiny pleat. And it'll work out. Beautiful. Got to add the zipper. And it is next to impossible to explain what I am doing to install the invisible zipper, so enjoy the music. Alrighty, the zipper is in place. And I don't know exactly what the next step is, but the finishing touches are going to be to hand stitch the lining in place and then hem the skirt. So we're going to do that. All done. But as it is late, I can't do the final reveal tonight. So sorry. And here she is, all done and beautiful. And the pattern came together quite nicely. Although a few changes I made, I ended up switching out to a 12-inch zipper because, I mean, it's fairly loose. I could actually slide this thing over my head completely closed up. So I didn't need a 24-inch zipper or a 22-inch zipper. A 12-inch zipper works just fine for me. And I used a regular zipper. I don't know if you can tell. Because, quite frankly, I don't like invisible zippers. And even if an invisible zipper is the only option, I'm going to probably put it in like you would a regular zipper because I'm not bothered if my zipper can be seen. And the pattern was nice. The instructions do include a video along with the written instructions. My only qualm was that a few items were never listed, like the elastic for the sleeves and the drawstring for the front. They were never mentioned in the materials, and the instructions just said have 2 inches of drawstring, or 2 18 inches of drawstring, I should say, or insert elastic into the sleeve. Didn't specify anything about how or why or anything like that. Which I am used to their patterns not really explaining how to do a thing. They just kind of let you go off your instincts, which there were a few moments with this one where instead of following the instructions, I just kind of went with my not instincts but preferences, like with the felling or flat felling of the skirt seams, and I think that was the biggest one that I did my own thing. Also, it didn't explain how you were supposed to attach the lining on the inside. I just kind of, again, went with my instincts on that one. Changes that I would make, I might, since the back is so loose, I might actually put sort of sash ties on the side so I can tighten it up in the back and give it that really cinched look in the front. Now, I probably should have considered this earlier, but most patterns, I have a long torso, so most patterns aren't going to fall on my torso the way they're supposed to. So this bust does not fall under my bust. It's like halfway through my bust. And if I want it to fall under my bust, it pulls too tight on the sleeve, so that would be an easy fix. I don't have to lengthen any part of the bodice. I would just have to lengthen the sleeve strap, and it would be fine. But at the current moment, I like it. It's going to be really fun one to lounge around the house in.